but how we're really marching to that $50 million level. And then our ultimate goal is we want to become a $100 million company. And I think what you are realizing is, hey, we have to do things and structure things a little bit different.
Hey, welcome back to the Amazing Freedom Podcast, the show where we talk about all things finding profitable products to sell on Amazon and how to launch them successfully, something that we have been doing for close to 7 or 8 years now each. And it's been a pretty incredible ride along the way, but there's always something new to look at and something new to learn. And so we constantly try to stay on top of that and let you guys know what we're seeing in our own business. If you've been following us this year, we are on a journey or path or a goal to hit $10 million in our own largest brand that we currently co-run together. And we have had a lot of really interesting updates already at amazingfreedom.com/insider, where we talk about what our goals were for each month, January, February, March, where we ended up there, our profitability, our PPC, and a lot of really detailed stats. We actually show you screenshots from our account and what that is looking like. So if you haven't yet, definitely encourage you to go to amazingfreedom.com/insider. Sign up to become an insider and you'll get that monthly report, as well as a weekly newsletter that we're putting out where we are just giving you updates week to week, what we're seeing going on in our own businesses and around the Amazon seller ecosystem that we are involved in. So Andy, as we get in today, we're going to be talking about a couple interesting products that we have come up, maybe a way to accelerate your product discovery through buying brands that might be helpful. But before we get into that, I just want to catch up with you. How have you been doing? I was gone last week, so I haven't talked a lot. What's new with you in the world of Amazon or life in general?
Yeah, so it was a little bit of a quiet week last week with you being gone on vacation, which I'm super happy that you're able to get away. But with you coming back, and when you have time to kind of think, it tends to happen. You come back and you have a lot of awesome ideas. And so I think that's what we've been digesting this week and going into some different things with our business. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that right now, of how we've hit 10 million, over 10 million the last 2 years in a row, but how we're really marching to that $50 million level. And then our ultimate goal is we want to become a $100 million company. And I think what you are realizing is, hey, we have to do things and structure things a little bit different. And so it's been exciting to hear your discovery and kind of the things that we're switching around in our business to get to that, become that $100 million company.
Yeah. So last week before Easter, my family and I drove to the Smoky Mountains up in Pigeon Forge area. It was really nice. Had a cabin overlooking, looking at the mountains, everything. We went to Dollywood and the theme park. The kids loved it, right? So it was a great time, but it was the first week probably in a couple years where I didn't have a meeting the entire week, a scheduled meeting. They were on the calendar, but I didn't show up or whatever. So that was kind of difficult to unplug in that way. Definitely work pretty consistently most weeks. That just shows you if it's been a couple of years that I haven't had a single week without a meeting in some format. So it was good to unplug in that way. But like you said, I had that 8-hour drive both ways. And I like to listen to audiobooks typically when I'm driving. So I listened to a really good book there and back. While I was there, I just took time to reflect, look at some kind of big picture vision more than just a typical week to week or month to month. And like you said, I was really just looking at the structure of what's gotten us to $10 million in sales and, this goal that we're on this year, and what's going to get us to that and bigger over the next 5-10 years, what have you. Right. So it was really good. I definitely, you hear this from everybody, right? But I encourage everybody at some period, try to schedule in a time period where you can really unplug a little bit, reflect, take a 30,000 foot view instead of the normal day-to-day craziness of just trying to operate things. And typically you'll start to think a little bit broader, bigger. In some things that we're currently doing or that you might be doing, I think when you take this time to reflect, you realize, man, I'm just spinning my wheels. This is something I feel like I need to do. It's a lot of activity that's generating, but it's really not getting us anywhere. And so sometimes when you pause and reflect, you actually end up getting further, even though in the short term it feels like you're not doing a whole lot. Or that's me at least, and maybe that's just my drive to feel like I need to be busy doing something, and so I try to be aware of that.
It's interesting. So I read a book a long time ago. It was actually when I was in college, called The Tyranny of the Urgent. And this is something I think that you and Abs is our right hand man. He's our COO for our company. I think you both do this really well, that you really think through and you process kind of what the goals are for the company. And you don't necessarily let the tyranny of the urgent distract you from what is most important. I don't know. I just thought of that book. I think when I think about both of you guys, I think that you do an amazing job of that, of not letting the urgent become the tyranny and still just pushing ahead with what the ultimate goals are.
Yeah, I shared in a Millionaire Minds mastermind that we did a couple of months ago, which is part of the Amazon Seller Tribe Coaching Program for $1 million sellers. I shared this 4 quadrant urgency importance thing that goes along with, I'm sure, that book that you read in a different format. But basically, most people spend their time on either highly urgent, highly important task, or highly urgent, not important task, but because it's urgent, that's where you spend your time, right? And I forget where I got this from, but they said that, they really want to spend 60% of their time in the highly important, not urgent stuff, right? Because if something's urgent, it usually means that you've waited too long to get to it, or you're not doing kind of the big picture planning enough. You're just stuck in the day to day. So although highly urgent, highly important activities obviously are important because they're important and urgent, you have to get to those. If you can think forward enough, if you can delegate, if you can hire the right people, you can spend more of your time on the super important but not as urgent, where you're kind of frantic and really not able to think at that higher level. So I'm sure that book basically was thinking all in that same premise of not constantly operating in the here and now urgency.
Yeah, and I think if we're going to get to the 50 million and then the 100 million, we definitely have to, have folks that are pushing and not getting caught up, right, in the tyranny of the urgent.
Yeah. So on that note, to get into that first topic you talked about, and then we'll talk about some product discovery things. One of the things, we came back, we spent a lot of time with you, Abs, and me the other day, was just looking at the accountability structure of our business right now, really trying to simplify the business into the most basic, simple form, looking at the structure of leadership and looking at our marketing and sales, the operations, the finance, and kind of integrating that all together. And at the end of the day, I think what it really comes down to for every business in the world really is getting the right people in the right seats. And you'll hear this a lot from business experts like Jim Collins, who wrote Good to Great and a number of highly decorated business books, right? And he's looking at these billion-dollar companies, Fortune 100, 500 companies, but it really applies down to a smaller company like ours that has anywhere between 20 and 30 employees typically at a given time, that you need the right people in the right seats. And even if you're a brand new entrepreneur just starting and there's only you, or maybe you and a spouse, or you and a couple VAs, what have you, right? It's still about having the right person in the right seat. And at the moment, it typically, in the beginning, it's you filling every seat. And by seat, we just mean role or responsibility. And so looking at our business, we realize that we have a lot of good people and we have a lot of seats, but I don't think we still have gotten to the point where we have all the right people in all the right seats. We have some people that are good, but they're kind of doing too many things spread out and not focusing on the right areas, including me. We found that still for a lot of seats, even though I talk about this when we go through the thing, I'm still sitting in almost every seat in some format, right? Personally, which just is not sustainable from a focused growth mode. So, we're just talking about how do we get me personally out of sitting in every seat in some format, touching everything, and so much so that if I do go away for a week, it doesn't kind of fall apart in some format, right? Those types of things. And so I think that's important for everybody to look at it, not in an organizational chart structure of titles. Like that really doesn't matter. It's just looking at the functions and roles and accountabilities of your business. And in an e-commerce business like ours, there's a lot of similarities for everybody, right? Like everybody needs that platform management of like the Amazon account, right? That's a core function. And there's inventory management, and there's supply chain relations and sourcing your products. And then there's some kind of accounting function, even if you outsource it, right? Every business needs to have some kind of finance accounting function. And if you don't, eventually you're going to go off the rails when you realize that you haven't been tracking your money and you're actually losing money this whole time, even though you thought you were making money. So every business has these functions. Looking at it and getting the right people in the right seat is really important. And I think we've just came to the, conclusion realization, hey, there's probably two really big functions in our business as it stands that we just need to hire the right people into like yesterday, but probably in the next quarter, because really higher level seats you can't fill in a day typically. Like you really have to do your due diligence. You have to interview more aggressively than you would for maybe a smaller role. So that's just something I think we've come to the conclusion on, and say, like you said, if we want to get to 50 million, this is how we do it.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, that's good stuff.
So we'll update you guys as we kind of go through that journey more. Obviously, we worked with so many people over the past couple of years, but it's always still a learning process to kind of up your game in the management of teams, building teams, and finding the right people. And at the end of the day, business is run by people, whether it's just one entrepreneur who kills it and does it all, or it's a team of 50 people there where you just have more managing to do or delegating. It really all comes down to getting the right people there. All right. So Andy, you were browsing through the Amazon catalog and finding products, and this is something you do probably every day. Would you say how often, what's the longest you go between not looking on Amazon like randomly for product discovery? Random question, but is this something you do every day, or is it more just like once a week or something?
Yeah, so it's interesting that you asked that. It's definitely every day. Just things around my house. Like I'm looking at the lights that are around me right now. I'm looking at the ceiling fan that is above me right now. When I walk in somebody's house, I look at the chandelier. So I walked in somebody's house and they had a chandelier, and it was made out of mason jars. So it had kind of that barn country feel, but it had an elegant look to it, right? And so as soon as I see that, as soon as I leave their house, I go to Amazon and I start searching for it, because everything around us, right, is potential for private labeling and for products. The majority of products, right, that we have in our homes, in our offices are from Asia, either India, China, Taiwan. And so those are all potential products that we can potentially sell on Amazon. So I'm always kind of looking for those. When I'm in Amazon myself, I'm an Amazon Prime customer. I believe the stat is there's over 250 million now Amazon Prime customers in the US, right? Ordering things all the time. Every time I order something, I'm always looking and wondering, hey, look, could I sell this product? And so I'm always, before I purchase it, I go to Alibaba and I see what I could buy that for on Alibaba. Well, I was actually just going through the catalog the other day. I'm not sure how I stumbled on this. I wasn't looking for it, but I found these taco holders. So we all know that tacos are great memes. They're definitely a food that people love. And now on Amazon, there's this amazing niche of taco holders. And so I'm looking at this listing and my mind is blown, because this listing has only been around since 2018. It generates over $150,000 a month in revenue. What is it? It's 4 stainless steel taco holders that holds 4 little tacos. Now, to me, that sounds crazy. Could you really create a listing of 4 stainless steel taco holders and sell over $150,000 a month? Well, the answer is yes, you can. Go to Amazon, search with the terms taco holder, and you're going to find the Amazon bestseller. It's only been around since 2018, sells over $150,000 a month. It's not a complicated product. There's no patent on it. It's very easy. This Amazon seller's just done a great job of creating great images, great listing, and he's found the demand. Obviously in US, there's all kinds of households that making tacos every single week. And apparently they need a taco holder. So this seller's found that niche. Again, $150,000 a month. To me, that's mind blowing.
Yeah. So as you were describing, I love to hear how you were describing your process of every product you see, essentially analyzing that. Just shows what kind of Amazon nerds we are. I think me recently, I've been trying to think some different hobbies that I kind of enjoy, but honestly just haven't had time to really do much with it. But now that I'm thinking through, what might I, if I try to get in this hobby more, but I can't do it without saying, okay, how could I make a business around this so I could like sell products into this hobby? And I'm not giving the niche because I might still do it. That's why that's why I'm holding back. But I have a hard time not just doing something for the sake of enjoyment. I'm like, okay, what's the business angle? I'm gonna be able to have some write offs with this. I'm gonna make a cool product. I'm gonna be able to make my own user generated content around these products because I like them and I'm going to do it. So it's hard to get Amazon off the brain when you are deep invested into it for years and years, I guess. But maybe someday we'll detox and not look at the whole world through the
But
matrix
it's
code.
funny that you say that, because when you're doing something and you consider it fun, it really doesn't feel like work, right? And so, for us, I think we both enjoy this. And for me, just flipping products is always, there's a certain level of dopamine, that gets processed in my brain when I'm able to buy something low and then sell it for high. And so, for the listeners, I encourage you, whether you're at Sam's Club, Costco, wherever you're doing, if you're buying a product, you should always look on your app, download the Alibaba.com app, look and see what you potentially could purchase that product for on Alibaba. It's a great way to start building and generating a potential private label list.
Yeah, and as we segue to the next thing I wanted to talk about, you said something that made me think of this little YouTube 15-minute documentary I recently watched about a guy named Sam Zell. He was like immigrant, or his parents were, and he, just worked crazy hard through the 50s, 60s time period, really built like a real estate empire. And he said something along the lines of, he got his lawyer degree, and he said, people asked him why he kept pushing so hard into his late years. And he said, hey, I haven't worked a day in my life since those 4 days I worked at a law firm and then quit or whatever. Right. So it's kind of that same mentality of, I just said I haven't taken a break in a week, but in some ways I haven't worked, worked since I quit my past job that to go full time selling on Amazon and everything. It's definitely a different feeling than I think what most people traditionally think of as work.
Yes, yeah, for sure. And the ultimate test is, when you're working, does it give you energy, or do you feel like it depletes your energy? Now, it will deplete it to a certain level, but there's also, when you're doing something that you're passionate about, it kind of keeps you jazzed up.
Yeah, I definitely get depleted and I need a break, but then I always kind of want to go back to it because I'm like, man, I miss that energy that it gives it. So it's always a balance, right? Hey, I wanted to talk about this book that's pretty popular in the last year or two. It's called Buy Then Build, and it's a really well done book about buying a business and then building up, and for a lot of people, instead of trying to create a business from scratch. And I think it goes along the lines of, some people just aren't, right brain, left brain, whatever you want to call it. Some people have a hard time building something from scratch, and they're much more of a operator in nature, and they might be really good business principles, but they're not as good at what we talk about here every week, or what you were just talking about. They're not as good in that product discovery. They're just not very creative. Maybe they're so logical and literal that they have a hard time looking at the mason jar chandelier and coming up with the idea or whatever, right? And so for some people, buying a business and shortcutting that product discovery that we talk about here all the time, and that's why I wanted to talk about this now, might be the answer for you if you're listening, right? So if you've been trying to find the right product for years or months or whatever it is, and you just feel like that is not your gift or your energy, but maybe buying a business and operating it and scaling it is where you would have more success. I think that book is really good, worth looking at. And I think acquiring a micro brand, a micro Amazon brand, that's kind of probably under the Amazon aggregator radar. Obviously, the competition is kind of stiff lately for buying businesses in Amazon because you're competing with these aggregators. But I mean, Andy, what are they looking for? They're typically looking for businesses now these days in 2022 with revenue definitely over $1 million, right? Definitely there. And typically like an EBITDA of, I would say like $500,000 or more seems to be what I'm hearing. So I guess first I would ask you, if you were looking at it in this way, what revenue target might you be looking at? And where would you go if you're like, yeah, I do have some capital. Obviously, you have to have some money for this or be able to get some debt financing. And this is you. What would you do if you're that person listening?
Yeah, so I think this is a great option, especially for folks who have been selling on Amazon for a while. Maybe retail arbitrage or online arbitrage has been their primary business model for the last 4 to 5 years, and they want to get into private labeling. But just like when you and I first started, we didn't really know anything about it, and so we definitely had a lot of misses along the way. Products that we launched that, thankfully we were able to break even or just lose a little bit of money. We call that our master's education, right? And launching products. But for folks that know the Amazon ecosystem, buying a business that already you can see the numbers, you can look at the trailing 12 months is a great option. And so there's a number of brokers out there. Empire Flippers is one of them. We really like Quiet Light Brokerage. They give like very detailed information that you can click into about their business. And they're offering businesses right now. If you go to quietlight.com, you'll see there's a business that's for sale for $25,000. And this is Amazon FBA brand, all the way up to 15 million. So the one that really interested me, and we were looking at it the other day, there's one for sale for 300,000. Now that sounds like a lot of money, but this business generates $500,000 in revenue. And all it is one SKU. So that to me, it's one listing and it has 2 child variations on it. It's basically like a carpet, but they've done an amazing job with their branding, with their images. They have, again, you can look and see what the revenue has been for the trailing 12 months. I believe this has been on the Amazon catalog now for 2 years. So you can see what it did really for 24 months. And there's a lot of information there. And then it's really just about, hey, once you buy that business, you're just managing the supply chain and then figuring out how can you build out other products around it. So it's, similar to if you were buying a franchise. I think, Subway is going to help you kind of along the way. So think of it in those terms, but it's a great way, especially for folks that don't know anything. It's also a great way for folks who do know something about private label. If you think that it's a good brand that you can build out, but especially I believe for folks that want to get into private label and they don't want to necessarily make those mistakes, it's kind of a done for you brand already right there.
I think you made a really good point. If you're already selling on Amazon, but a different model, you don't have to worry about a lot of those intro things like just navigating a Seller Central account. It really does shortcut it. There will be some new things to learn, like communicating with suppliers in a different manner or whatever. But for the most part, you really have a handle on, instead of selling somebody else's brand, you're selling your own brand, right? So you get that. Now, if you haven't sold on Amazon at all and you go to do this, my advice would be that you look for a brand where the owner is going to really give you some good training, or there's going to be some type of team in place that is continuing to operate a lot of it, and you can kind of learn that way, right? Or you're going to be doing a lot. Things could go wrong, obviously, because it's not as the Subway franchise. What's nice about that is they do literally have like an operating manual, right? Like that's the franchise. McDonald's, Subway, like you follow this guidebook that they force you to do, and you really can't go in your own way. Amazon's not like that, right? Everybody runs their business different, so you can make mistakes along the way. But what you said is so true there, and I think it's a really good option for people to look at, is buying and then scaling up a brand.
Yeah, like this one again. If you go to Quiet Light, you'll see it. 300,000 is the asking price. Their net revenue per year is right around 94,000. So you're buying it at a 3 times multiple. But you're buying a business that has had a trailing 12 months of over $500,000 in revenue. And so, you really need to look at it in those terms. And I know that we know a number of people who are just really good at buying businesses like this, and they've done it before, and they're able to increase that revenue from 500,000 to $1 million. And a listing like this, right, where they have great branding, their name is trademarked, right? It would be, I think, fairly easy to create some other products around that branding that's going to, instantly increase your overall revenue. So yeah, I think it's a great way, to kind of bypass that product discovery phase that a lot of private label sellers like you and I have gone through, where you are going to hit a lot of bumps, a lot of hiccups, a lot of learning along the way to come into a brand that instantly is profitable.
Yeah, so there's two books I would recommend reading if you're going to seriously consider this. Number one would be that Buy Then Build book. And number two, this one's actually about selling businesses, but it's written by the Quiet Light Brokerage, one of the founders, Joe Valley. It's called the Exitpreneurs Playbook. And it shows things from a selling standpoint, like if you wanted to sell your Amazon business. So if you're looking to sell your business, it's a good book. But I think it's a good book also if you're looking to buy, because it basically would show you the reverse, like all the things that you should look for as both a buyer and seller in a business. So I think if you are buying an Amazon business, this Exitpreneurs Playbook would basically show you some of the tricks that like sellers try to play, that buyers try to do. And it's really good for both buying and selling Amazon businesses. So I recommend both of those.
And let's just say this too. If you're looking at potentially buying a business, it is 100% worth your while to consult with somebody. We don't do it, but there are other sellers out there who will. Before you lay down 150 or 200 or even $300,000, I would consult with a private label seller who would be able to help you with due diligence and looking at that business, because it definitely is tricky over the last 2 years because of COVID. There are many businesses that blew up and had great sales revenue in 2020, 2021. And you don't want to get caught buying a business that has a severe COVID hangover or is not going to generate the same revenue that it did during COVID. So you and I were looking at that one just recently, and we were looking at it, was kind of excited about it. And then all of a sudden, boom, we saw the revenue took a huge bump in March of 2020, which, right around then is like when COVID really started to hit, right? Things started to close down. And so we were like, that may mean that this business, a lot of the revenue was driven because of COVID. So just make sure when you're looking at these businesses, you really do your due diligence, and it is 100% worth your money. If you have to pay someone $1,000, right, to help you vet a business, it's worth it.
Yeah. So we talk all the time about finding the right products to sell on Amazon. One of the ways to do it might be by buying your way into a product that's already selling well. And I think it is something that isn't for everybody, but some people should look at. Hey, we should probably talk about the update to the Amazon fees, the FBA fulfillment fees happening April 28th, which, depending on when this is released, I'm not sure when that happened, 2022. This kind of caught everybody by surprise, right? Because Amazon basically was like, we already did a fee increase earlier this year, but surprise, inflation, another fee. And so let's break down what exactly it means, because I know it sounds scary. 5% fee increase to the fulfillment fees. But I also wanted to say that it might not be as bad as it initially sounds for most people, I think. So just to keep in mind, your fulfillment fees are only a percentage of your total costs, right? So typically for most sellers, this is very rough back of the napkin math, but you have a 15% referral fee on almost all categories, not all, but most of them, right? And you should know basically if you're a private label seller, what you fall under. Most categories, 15%. And then fulfillment fees are different depending on the size, the product, all these different things. But for the most part, a general rule has always been it comes out to roughly 15% of the price. Again, not always, but that's kind of like what it does for a total of like 30% that Amazon, costs when you're using FBA, right? Roughly. So we're just looking at not your referral fee. That's not changing. Just the fulfillment fee, which again, on average has been roughly 15%. Maybe that's more now. I'm just throwing out kind of old numbers. But if you look at a 15% of that, a 5% increase on that 15, that would become 15.75% of total, right? And so your Amazon total fees or costs might be going up 0.75%, which will obviously for everybody impact the bottom line if you don't increase prices to counterbalance that, right? And I think what we're just seeing is this is what Amazon's saying. Everybody's using inflation as like an excuse in a way, but it's real in the sense that everything is costing more. Fuel is more. Shipping has been more the last 2 years from China. And so if you're not looking at your pricing, if you're not running your numbers on a monthly basis in a P&L statement, if you don't have a list of all your SKUs and the exact up-to-date cost and true margin and ROIs, you can start to over time see your margins go down lower and lower. So you have to run the numbers. And the hardest part, I guess, Andy, is how do you increase prices when your competition is holding strong at the current price? That's the real challenge that I think every seller is trying to navigate right now. I mean, what's your thought process from a psychological standpoint, I guess, or whatever, the rest of this year?
Yeah, so it really depends on the niche, right? It depends on the level of competition that you might be facing, in your search for your search terms, and then you just have to make like a real business decision. Do you want to potentially slow down your velocity to increase your margin? But again, like all things, you pull one lever, it might affect another. That could potentially affect your organic rank, which if inflation ever, goes back down, then that could hurt you in the long run. So there are a lot of factors that you have to put into it. But we know that, look, you can't stay in business and lose money. It doesn't work that way. You have to have margin. And if your logistics, if your shipping costs are going up, we know that our suppliers in China, plastic has gone up, right, because of the war in Ukraine. We know that there's a lot of different raw materials that are being affected. So your prices are going up across the board. You're just going to have to figure out, what as a business you're going to do to try to combat, what everyone's facing.
And I think this is why a lot of people came out earlier this year, and they're right, I think, in the sense saying you need to focus more than ever on building the brand, because somebody's willing to pay a certain percent premium for a brand versus the generic unknown, right? And Amazon's kind of built on this generic unknown lately. But if you're selling for if the low cost competitor is selling for 25 and you're at 27, but you have the better branding, the better off Amazon marketing, sometimes that's enough, and it gives you that margin boost. So yeah, more important than ever, and we'll obviously be in the thick of it ourselves in our own brand and talking about it as the year progresses. All right, and I wanted to lastly say here that one thing that we're seeing in AMZ Pro, which is our service where we help sellers recover reimbursement money and take care of negative seller feedbacks at AMZProfessional.com. An interesting thing we don't talk about a lot that we're seeing recently is our second highest reimbursement total by like category of types of reimbursements this past week was actually for canceled shipment recovery, which is an interesting reimbursement I think most sellers don't think about. So when you create an FBA shipment and it goes kind of a little while, and you have the shipping costs paid in there and deducted, if you cancel that shipment, there is a scenario where you don't automatically get your money back that you paid into that. And AMZ Pro can help with getting that canceled shipment dollars recovered and reimbursed back to you. So I thought that was interesting. That's one I don't hear talked about a lot. We had a couple $1,000s in our own brand recovered and returned to us, and across all accounts that we help manage, this was the second highest for the week, and it fluctuates just depending on different elements. But I thought that was an important one for everybody to be thinking on. And if you're not currently looking at that and you're doing a lot of FBA shipments, make sure you look at that, or go to AMZProfessional.com. Let us help you out on that. We're getting better every month, every year, because we've been doing this for years and years, helping sellers, but we're constantly getting better on helping people get more money back that Amazon owes you. All right, guys. Well, I want to encourage you again, go to amazingfreedom.com/insider, become an insider. Make sure that you're checking out all things that Andy and I are doing on our $10 million challenge, our new $1 million product line challenge, which is going really well. Actually, we have a special promotion right now that's happening for that, where we paid a couple $1,000s to an influencer, and we're paying for that brand to get promoted. It is a long-term play, that brand that we're doing. And we have a couple new products we're looking to launch in. We started a new Instagram account around this niche specifically for this product line just last couple weeks. So tons of exciting stuff that we'll be putting in these updates. We'll be letting you guys know in our monthly updates on our $10 million challenge in that weekly newsletter. Until next time, guys, thanks for listening. We'll catch you on the next episode of the Amazing Freedom Podcast.